भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
नारायणं नमस्कृत्य
नारायणं नमस्कृत्य
नरं चैव नरोत्तमं
नरं चैव नरोत्तमं
देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं
देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं
ततो जयमुदीरये।
ततो जयमुदीरये।
नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु
नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु
नित्यं भागवत सेवया
नित्यं भागवत सेवया
भगवते उत्तमश्लोके
भगवते उत्तमश्लोके
भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके
भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके।
कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय
कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय
देवकी नन्दनाय च
देवकी नन्दनाय
नन्दगोपकुमाराय
नन्दगोपकुमाराय
गोविन्दाय नमो नमः।
गोविन्दाय नमो नमः।
ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य
ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया
चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन
चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन
तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः।
तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः।
श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं
श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं
स्थापितं येन भूतले
स्थापितं येन भूतले
स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं
स्वयं रूपा कदामह्यं
ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्।
ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्।
हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो
हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो
दीनबन्धु जगत्पते
दीनबन्धो जगत्पते
गोपेश गोपिकान्ता
गोपेश गोपिकान्त
श्रीराधाकान्त नमोस्तुते।
श्रीराधाकान्तनमोस्तुते।
तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी
तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी
श्रीराधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी
श्रीराधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी
वृषभानुसुते देवी
वृषभानुसुते देवी
प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये।
प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये।
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च
सिन्धुभ्य एव च
कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।
जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य
जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य
प्रभु नित्यानन्द
प्रभु नित्यानन्द
श्री अद्वैत गदाधर
श्री अद्वैत गदाधर
श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द
श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द
हरे कृष्णा
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा
कृष्णा हरे हरे
कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे
हरे राम
हरे राम राम
हरे हरे
राम हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna and welcome everybody to our Krishna Fest program. So with all your blessings, would like to make a humble attempt to repeat something from the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada and his representatives. I hope this will be informative and helpful for all of you. So, it's a very important and interesting topic. And yesterday, somebody asked me that your theme of this week's talk is very interesting. Karma, think before you act. So I said, yeah, we wanted to keep something, so that it is very appealing. Then they said, so it's just a topic or also, I mean, just the title or the topic and contents also will be pertinent to that. Or theme something and the content is something different. So no, the content also will be relevant to that topic that we are addressing. So be rest assured that we'll be discussing about this pertinent topic about karma and about the items that we should be thinking before we act next time. So I want to begin with a small anecdote. So one time it so happened that there was a contest of the longest living married couple. So they found some 90-year-old wife and husband goes to 90 years. They got this nice award in that community. So the reporter asked that what is the secret of your long-lasting marriage? Because these days we see marriages don't last so long. Well, he said, the husband spoke. He said, when we got newly married, we went to honeymoon. And then we went on a horse ride. And it so happened that there was the lady, I mean, there were two horses, and there were two couples who were manning those two horses. So my wife sat on one of the horses, and mine on the other one. And for some reason, my horse, I mean, my husband's horse was more passionate. It was going more faster. And the husband, who is actually helping ride the horse, so he happened to kind of try to control it, but was not in control. So the wife of that person who was helping this person's wife, so she said, "Come on, why can't you be fast?" Well, he said, "Why don't you be fast?" So you know, we both go at the same pace. Then she said, "First time." Then again after some time, again he asked, "Why don't you just come closer? These people can enjoy." Second time. Then again same thing happened. Then he asked third time, and after that lady took the pistol and shoot her husband. And then after that, there was some incident happened, and then my wife also said first time. And after that, I never dared to ask her any question. And that was the reason of my successful married life. So every time I decided my karma is dependent on this question. So I make sure that I will never ask this question. So sometimes we have to think before we act, and that particular incident imprinted in his memory, so he never repeated the incident. So likewise, at every instance of our life, we have the option to think what is good and what is bad, to think about the consequences. If I can follow that incident. And oftentimes, under influence of our anger or of our uncontrolled senses, we fail to have control on our activity. The best example of this is Duryodhana in Mahabharata. Even though he knew what is right, he could not control. We discussed this specific quality of Duryodhana earlier also, but just for the sake of this context, in Mahabharata it's written, Janati dharma nachame nivritti, Janati adharmam nachame pravritti. Kenapi devena adhisthitena yatha niyuktosi tatha kurmi. So, Duryodhana is telling to Krishna that janati dharmam nachame nivritti. That I know what is dharma, but I just can't do it. I don't want to do it. And janati adharmam nachame pravritti. And I know that this is adharma, but I can't stop myself from performing that act. Kenapi devena adhisthitena. As if there is some devilish force sitting within the heart. Yatha niyuktosi tatha kurmi. And as it dictates, I am doing it. So, as our Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Swami Maharaj explains, that there is a good dog and a bad dog sitting in your heart. So, whatever dog you feed, that dog will dictate your activities. So, today, with that small brief introduction, we'll be discussing about these main topics. What is karma? Oh no, I don't know why. So what is karma? What is the power of time? The logic of karma. Then we'll talk about cause and effect. We'll talk about instant versus delayed karma. Or in other words, why do bad things happen to good people? A very, very common question. We'll talk about the science of karma, beyond karma, and the checklist for us about the karma. Is it too loud? Okay. So, the karma generally means any activity. But when we go very deep, according to scriptures, karma means those activities which are caused by the desire of living entities and which are conducted under the control of time. Very, very important. That is called as karma. The activity which is conducted, which is performed by the desire of a living entity, and it is conducted under the control of time. That is precisely according to the standard of Bhagavad Gita is the definition of karma. These days, karma have multiple connotations. Sometimes karma means, this is my karma, it's my fate. Or karma means just doing some activity without having an understanding of what activity is, whether good or bad. But in this context, we will see what exactly is karma and how it fits into our day-to-day life and how can we actually address the problems that we undergo while executing these actions. So, as we all know, Newton's third law, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. But the constraint of this law is it is only confined to the inanimate objects. While when you extrapolate this principle, this is also applicable to the living entities. So the universal law of karma is technically, it is the Newton's third law is inclusive of this universal law of karma. But the only difference is the Newton's law deals with only inanimate objects. It doesn't deal with the complexity of the human beings, living entities. But the universal law of karma deals with all the living entities. Everybody in this material world is subjected to the law of karma. And several times we are at the crossroads of deciding what is good and what is bad. In the Puranas, there is a very beautiful story. There was a Brahmana who was a sage who was in and doing some worship in his small hermitage. A cow started running towards him, towards his hermitage, and it went into a certain direction, and just to hide herself behind some trees or something. And the butcher followed shortly, and he said, "Hey Brahmana, have you seen a cow?" So this person was confused, the Brahmana. He wasn't sure what to tell, because he knew if he tells the truth, then that cow will be slaughtered. And if he lies, then he will break his dharma, his vow of speaking the truth. So after debating himself within his mind, he just pinpointed towards a certain direction. That this is right. And just right in front of his eyes, the butcher just pulled the cow, and the cow was slaughtered. And he felt very bad that because of me, the cow was slaughtered. And just fast forward a few years later, there was this other Brahmana who happened to be traveling, and it was evening time twilight, and he typically the Vedic era. So it is very common for you to take or seek shelter at the homes of different grahasthas. So this mentor of one family said, "Can I just take rest in your, porch for tonight, so that you can then start contributing tomorrow morning?" He said, "Why not? Please." In the middle of the night, the lady of the home comes out, and she speaks with this Brahmana, tells him that you are a very nice, effulgent, beautiful Brahmana and a beautiful woman. Why don't we just go elope from here? Go to the forest and enjoy. He said, "Come on, I'm here just to seek shelter for one night. Please, and this is not good. And no, you are a nice, chaste woman, so you should better go inside and be with your husband." And she becomes very irritated. He said, "You are declining my proposal? See what I will do." She goes inside, takes a knife, and kills her husband. And immediately calls for help. And all the villagers get assembled. And then they have this village head and all the other jury members who wanted to give justice to this woman. And this Brahmana said, I'm perfectly innocent. I don't know what happened. This lady is just framing me in this particular charge. I don't know really. She killed, in fact. But then the lady, she outbursted her emotions and she was able to convince that actually it's this person, this Brahmana, who killed her husband. In the pretext of enjoying this lady. And everybody came to the conclusion that yes, this Brahmana is a culprit. And they sentenced, because he's of a top caliber of society as a Brahmana, we should not kill him. So we will cut his hand. So they cut his right hand. And immediately after having this insult and this particular incident, he left that village and he went into some forest and he was tired and he sat under a tree. And he was just meditating on Lord. "Oh Lord, what did I do wrong? I just asked for some shelter for one night, and this is what happened. How much injustice is this? And why upon me? What did I do wrong?" And because of some cosmic arrangement, he was able to recollect, and he got that inner voice from the Paramatma about the reason why he is implicated in this particular injustice. So he got to know that he was the very same Brahmana in his previous life. And that woman was a cow who was slaughtered by the butcher. And that butcher in this life came as her husband. So because the butcher killed the cow, the laws of nature are so predefined and precise that he has to undergo that punishment. And this Brahmana, because he used his hand to pinpoint towards that cow, he has to forgo his hand towards that. But because he spoke the truth, he still got the body of a Brahmana. But had it been the case that he adhered to higher principles of saving that cow, probably he would have saved 2 lives. He would have saved the life of that butcher also, and that cow in the previous life. So this way, the law of karma is very intricate. And sometimes we may not see the immediate cause and effect. We'll discuss. So this was just to give an idea of how important and how complex is this law of karma and how much thoughtful we should be when we perform our activities. There was another incident. There was a farmer small home, and he had his gates open. And one day, one horse came inside his home. And all the neighbors and neighbors came and said, "Wow, you're so fortunate, so lucky. You are a horse." He said, "Well, what is luck? What is not luck? What is bad luck? It's all the will of the providence. I'm just fine." And the next day he saw that, and he took care of the horse literally. And next day to his surprise, the horse disappeared. And the neighbor came back again. He said, "What are you doing? You didn't put your gates closed because of the horse went away. Such a bad luck. Yesterday only you got such a big horse, and today you lost it." Poor luck. Said, well, what is good luck and what is bad luck? It's all the will of providence and fine. Then immediately next day, so 10 horses came towards his home. Again, the neighbor came and said, wow, that's great. Such a lucky day for you. But 10 horses. How did it happen? He said, well, I didn't deserve for anything. And I don't know whether it's good or bad. But it might have happened that I took care of the horse, my state horse, but I felt nice, so she went and brought another 9 horses. So, but I'm fine. I mean, I don't consider it's a good luck or a bad luck. It's just the will of the providence. Then again, after that, the son of that particular farmer, while playing with these horses, he fell down and he got injured severely. He broke his leg. Then again, the neighbors said, what a bad luck. Because 10 horses and you have small kids and you do not control, so your one child got hurt. He said, well, what is good, what is bad? It's all will of the Lord. And then there was some dacoity. Some dacoits attacked the village. And the village had announced that all the young, energetic youth should go and try to protect the village. And the neighbor came by and he said, see, I mean, so many youth from our village died. And your child must also have been part of that troop. I mean, who went to protect our village. Such a bad luck. He said, well, what is good, what is bad? But unfortunately, what happened is my son didn't qualify to become a soldier in that team because he had a broken leg. So he could not go. What is good and what is bad? It's all God's mercy. So this way we see that the reversals in life, sometimes the good comes, sometimes the bad comes. But if you try to cling and get attached and get emotionalized that this is what is good and this is what is bad, then we'll also undergo a turmoil of happiness and distress. Matras Pashastu Kamantriya Shitosam Dukha Agama Apayam Anityam Tams Titikshasva. Just like the non-permanent appearance of the seasons is there. The winter will come, will go, spring will come, summer will come, fall will come. So they all will come and go. Likewise, Krishna says the happiness and distress that appears out of this contact of senses with sense objects is also very, very temporary. Shita, Ushna, Sukha. It's like that. Just like happiness, distress, we have summer, winter. So one should not be deterred or withered by this change. That's a perfect example. And that's how, as a devotee, as a practicing spiritualist, one should groom himself to handle the situations in life. Whether the adversity comes or the prosperity comes, dealing with the equanimous mind. As I said, don't make any promises when you're too happy, and don't make any decisions when you're too happy or too sad. So one has to really control. So, as we discussed, the karma is activities performed in living entities conditioned by the three modes under the control and purview of time. And in this context, you see the karma is out of the prescribed duty, and when you perform prescribed duty, it's good. You are performing an action, and that action will have a reaction also. And the reaction could be good or bad, based on what type of action you perform. And the interesting key thing here is time. Under the purview of time. So I just wanted to take a quick 1 minute to hear out from the audience here. What do you think is karma? Just a very, very 1 quick minute interactive mode of discussion from ladies, gents. What do you think is karma? And is it really dependent on time? Any thoughts? Random thoughts are most welcome.
The only way I can think of connecting karma with time is if you do certain things within a time limit, there might be good action. But if the time passes, say like the doctor, if he wants to do certain things within the time, he might say patient. But if the time passes, if he's late for any reason, the same action might hurt the patient.
That's a good thought. That's nice. Anybody else? Any other points? August assembly of all of you. Anybody would like to share anything? So that's very true. That's a good point. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna covers 5 different aspects. The first one is the Bhagavan or Ishwar. The second one is Jiva, the living entity. The third is called Prakriti or the material nature. And the fourth and the fifth one is Kala and Karma. So of all these 5, 3 are eternal. The Supreme Lord is eternal, the living entities are eternal, and the Prakriti also is eternal. It may appear and disappear, but it's eternal. But only 2 things which are non-eternal is the karma and kala. Means your activities and the time under which these activities are conducted and you receive the reactions. And time factor is a very, very important aspect, very, very powerful. So many philosophers, so many writers, thinkers, they are marveling at this concept of time. What exactly is this time? The most closest explanation for time or to understand the power of time is not when you see somebody who was very weak at some point of time, he became very powerful. But rather when you see somebody who was extremely powerful and has now been decimated to a non-entity under the influence of time. Time could be with us for a certain amount of time, certain period of time, but like it's not under control. For example, people go to these places of civilization, old civilization, according to certain historians. They believe the civilization began in certain areas of Europe and Middle East, which of course doesn't comply with our Vedic scriptures, like Rome, Greece, Carthage, Iraq. It's called the cradle of civilization, where the civilization began. But if you go now to those places, what do we have there? Not much, right? Or even in the contemporary history, if you see Mohenjo-daro, one of the prominent civilizations that was existing, what do we have there now? Some remnants, some antique, some architectural remnants, nothing else. Or we see the great leaders, the dictators, the powerful men who controlled a major portion of the world at some point and had such a great influence, as if it appeared that now for eternity they are going to control. But under the control of time, they had to surrender. For example, Alexander the Great, he tried to conquer the entire world, and he had to, of course, go back after reaching India. It just was very short-lived. Roman Empire, such a strong empire, it was said that they were covering almost half of the Earth's population at that point in time. Right from the tip of the Africa to the end of the Europe, all that span was controlled by the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire came in. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the greatest dictators, just had to. He was at a point when the time was in his favor, he was able to win and bring everything under his domain. But the moment his control was gone, he had to actually undergo a very severe, insulting last phase of his life. Adolf Hitler. So his army was so powerful, practically before Second World War, he declared that his government will control or rule the entire world. And it only lasted for 12 years. But he was so powerful and had to undergo a very unceremonious, unglorious death. So likewise we see so many great people came, great civilizations came and went off under the control of time. So time is so powerful. And Bhagavad Gita is one scripture which explains this concept of time to a great length of detail. As Krishna explains in the 11th chapter, Kalosmi loka kshayakrit pravruddho lokan samahrutam iha pravruddha. He says, time I am the destroyer of the worlds. This is the ghastly feature of the Lord. They say if you don't surrender to the Lord in His loving relationship, you have to surrender to Him at the time of death. The surrender is inevitable. Whether you surrender with free will, out of devotion, or under these circumstances. But time is going to dictate. And that's why we should not be over complacent when the time is in our favor. Just a matter of time that the things will change. So this material world is compared to an exclusive device. And every moment it's ticking away towards its last end. So that's how this time is controlling all the activities in this material world. So, playing the devil's advocate role, one may ask that why should I believe if law of karma exists at all? Why should I worry about it? Let's be happy, live life king size, do whatever I want. Why should I even think about law of karma? And time, okay, that's fine. So there are two philosophies, two schools of thought, the Karmavad and the Daivavad. The people with Karmavad, they may say, I don't believe in all this. All I believe is, I will do, and I have my destiny under my control, and I will hit it. But to look at it from a different perspective, we can see that everything in this world is governed by the laws of nature. We see that the seasons, they govern certain laws. We see sun governs the laws of nature. Till yet, it never so happened that the sun didn't rise. Had it ever happened? Now, some atheists may say, if God is there, then let Him stop the sun. But our question should be, if you think God is not there, then why don't you go and stop the sun? So you cannot stop. Laws of gravitation. You cannot stop. People may say, okay, I will not follow, but if somebody goes to the top of the building and jumps, he will be subject to laws of gravity. So the laws of nature, just like the laws of gravity, is impartial to everyone, and it's inexorable. It is inevitable, unavoidable for anybody, and one has to understand that. And if the human beings they break the law of the nature, they will have to undergo suffering. Just like as I say, when you do an activity which is vikruti, means against the prakriti, against the normal course of nature, then the nature will react. Because the mother nature has to balance. And whenever there is an imbalance, we have seen the history is evident for this. That there are several reactions. Either reaction at global level, or reactions at local, individual, community level, or society level, or country level. But reactions there. So one has to understand that there are laws of nature, and human beings, just like any other living entity, animate or inanimate, everyone has to adhere to these laws of nature. So, quick graphical example of how this karma works. Like for every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. The reaction may take some time. Just like this person, he just pushed that brick. By the time it will hit him back, it will circle him back, it will take a while. But if somebody thinks that let me do whatever I like to do, I don't care. It's just a matter of time that the reaction will come. As I say, whatever you give, you get it back. As simple as that. So one should not try to escape, or one should not try to be ignorant. So how to understand that? There's a cause and the effect. And there are two rules that are governing this. So there should be a cause for every effect, right? If I am undergoing the suffering, there has to be a cause. Like for example, if somebody is drowning in the well, and if somebody is giving the rope to him, hey, come out. He says, no, I won't until you tell me who pushed me. Or perhaps you may come out and then try to find out who pushed you. But the innate nature of a human being to get the cause of every event in our life can be extremely detrimental for our next activity. So perhaps you may come out and then find out, or perhaps you may never find. Or perhaps somebody pushed someone and he pushed you. Like for example, those of you who have experiences, in some public places, if you're traveling somewhere, so somewhere you're standing in the line and somebody hits somewhere and then that ripple effect comes and then you will say, hey, why did you hit me? Say, come on, I didn't do anything. Somebody else hit me. But we will immediately be angry on that person. So one has to understand the cause. And one interesting thing is, as we all are trying to understand this higher dimensional science, it is very imperative for us to slightly expand the horizon of our thinking. So, the Acharyas explained that don't be angry. It's like Prabhupada who says, don't be angry on somebody or someone who is being used by Krishna as an instrument of your own karma. It's very important. Because your immediate instrument of giving you the effect may not be the cause of it. The cause may be something else. In fact, the cause is yours, your own self. Just like in that story we saw, that Brahmana was the cause for his own predicament in the next life. In Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra asked this question to Krishna. That Krishna, at least as long as my memory goes, and Dhritarashtra has a great power of remembering. He has an astute intelligence to remember his past lives. So he said, as far as I can think of, I have not done any activity because of it. At least none of my 100 sons, at least one of them is also not alive. What did I do wrong? He said, well, if you go back, rewind your lives minus 50, you were a hunter. And at one point, you were trying to kill a male bird. And that bird escaped. With a small injury to the eye, the bird became blind. In fact, the bird became blind later on, but before becoming blind, it escaped you, and then in the nest, it has 100 small, what do you call the small birds?
Eggs.
Not eggs, actually, the birds itself, the small birds when they, chickens,
Chicks.
what do you call it?
Chicks.
Chicks, yeah.
Chicks.
Chicks,
Right.
baby birds. Baby birds. So he actually shoot an arrow so that all these 100 small baby birds, I thought birdlets, is that right word? Birdlets? I'm sorry? Birdlings, correct, birdlings. So birdlings, all of them they died. And then you also then shoot an arrow on that male bird and it became blind. And it took so long for that action to come into the effect. He said, why 50 lifetimes? It's too long. Why you didn't punish me like next life? He said, because those 50 male birdlings, so that means you have to do enough piety, punya, to get putra or sons. So to get 100 sons, it took 50 lifetimes for you. And in this lifetime, that particular thing you can release it. So you got 100 sons, and this was the perfect time for you also to get the reaction of that specific activity. And since you didn't spare any of those wordings, none of your sons were also left away. Such a complex, intricate concept of karma. So, without limited intelligence, we might not be able to realize, and we may not be able to understand that how why things are happening so haphazardly in our life. Sometimes a stroke of luck, sometimes sheer bad luck, but there is a perfect reason behind it. So the two rules that govern this cause and effect is there should be a cause for every effect. It's not erratic. As some of the modern day propounders, may float this philosophy that all this karma thing. And one of the modern day arguments I heard is about polio. So they say because of the bad karma you are getting polio, but after having the polio vaccination, now nobody gets polio. That means the bad karma has vanished. No, then the material nature will find different way to punish. It doesn't mean that the story ends there. But our tiny human intelligence will try to find loopholes in the laws of nature, which is beyond our mundane intelligence. And the second thing is the cause and effect must be the same individual. Very same individual. So the law of karma is very simple. What you sow, so shall you reap. One of the things from Bible, which is so very true. If you sow nicely in your farm and plow the land, keep it ready, you get good rains, you will yield good results. But if you don't do it, as I mentioned, the karma and daiva. Karma is where you don't believe in anything, you just believe in yourself. Okay, I am doing it. So in this case, if the person on the left, if this person thinks that okay, I am the doer, and if I am doing something, and if rains don't fall, then what will happen? It will lead to frustration. You will have a month and he will become frustrated. The Daivavad is the other concept, where the other extreme is you don't do anything. Sabka Malik ek hai. He will take care of everything. I will not do anything. Will that help? That means it will cause laziness. If you just rely on the Daivavad, that if the Lord has to give, I will get. I will not do anything. But as an ideal spiritual practitioner, we have to use both karmavad and daivavad. Means you do your activity, you sow at the right time, you do the flowing of the land nicely, and keep things ready. And daivavad is when the material nature, the law of nature opens up and is favorable for you, you get nice rain, and then you get the rain. So one has to take a balance of the karmavad and daivavad, not go to either extreme. Because one will lead to frustration, other will lead to inaction or complete laziness. So it's very important to understand this principle. And as they say, this is just example of farming, but in our own lives also, when we perform an activity, that activity will have some sort of just like a boomerang. It will come back at some point. It will not leave you. You sow a thought, you reap an action. You sow an action, you reap a habit. You sow an habit, you reap a character. And you sow a character, you reap your destiny. So it all begins on our thought process. So we have to start aligning our thought process in accordance with the scriptural injunctions. Thinking positively, thinking what is the ultimate goal, rather than thinking for short-term gains. Thinking for our selfish or self-motivated or for the sense enjoyment, for individual sense enjoyment. Rather, we have to think beyond that. So, there is this good karma and the bad karma. And we'll just see in a minute the detailing about it. But in general, what is a good karma? Any just quick one or two responses from the audience. Of course, there are some examples that we have listed here: pious activities, cleanliness, compassion, truthfulness, hospitality. All good things that you can think of could be a good karma. And the bad karma could be impious activities, illicit relationship, meat eating, gambling, intoxication, anything. Keeping these two aspects outside, what do you think as good and bad karma?
Good karma is the one for which the consequences are in favor of the people. And the bad karmas are, somebody is getting hurt or somebody is losing something as the consequences of an action.
That's true to some extent. The problem is in this material world, the food for one is a poison for another. Something that is good for you may be bad for somebody else. So how will you define what is good and what is bad? It's very difficult, right? So one has to understand the right context, what is a good karma and what is a bad karma. But at the end of the day, both good and bad karma is not advisable because, as you can see on the left side, the good karma is like the shackles made of gold. And on the left side, bad karma is like the shackles made of iron. So you will be pushed to the third class plus category of the prison house. If you do a good karma, you will go to the first class where there are some VIP kind of facilities. But prison is prison at the end of the day. So one has to get out of that prison house. That is the real karma. And that we will see from here. And at the same time, the good karma cannot nullify bad karma. Today I did something wrong and tomorrow I will go and do a confession. Will that nullify? No. People think that I will go to Kumbh Mela once in 12 years and I will take a holy dip and all my sinful actions are gone. Okay, then what will next? Again I will start fresh account. But one should try to get out of the sinful propensity itself rather than repeating the same activity. So one has to go to the root cause of the problem. I just happened to see one of the small snippets. In fact, one of the devotees was forwarded to it, the declining age of Kali Yuga. So there was this one person in India who died and who happened to be a first-class drunkard and a smoker. So after he died, his friends, as his last oblations, they opened a wine or some sort of liquor bottle and then they were trying to just, everybody came, please drink, please drink. And then they decorated his coffin with nice cigarettes. All cigarettes surrounding, like a garden of cigarettes. Right before he was being cremated. What a degradation. So people have absolutely no idea about what is good and what is bad. Absolutely no. I mean, it's degrading day by day. So it's a call for an urgent action for like-minded people like us to take it to the next level, to actually apply these principles and improve ourselves and also help and impact the others. So Krishna explains this. What is good action, what is bad action? Krishna explains the karma, akarma and vikarma. Karmano here bodhavyam, bodhavyam cha vikarma. Akarmanascha bodhavyam, gahana karmavati. So Krishna tells Arjuna, please try to understand these three things. Karma, akarma and vikarma. What is karma? Karma is prescribed duty. In true sense, according to the standard Bhagavad Gita, when we say karma, karma means your prescribed duty. So what is prescribed? Just like we have heard about prescribed medicine, but not duty. So let's take prescribed medicine. What is a prescribed medicine? So when a doctor gives us a prescription, it becomes a prescribed medicine. And of course, the laws of this country are so strict that they will not give you any medicine you want. It may work in India, where you prescribe for yourself without having any background of medicine, medical knowledge. But in this country, it's very important. Likewise, a prescribed medicine is when it is given by a bona fide medical practitioner. It becomes your prescribed medicine, and when you take that, it will act on your body to help you overcome the disease. Similarly, prescribed duty means when you refer or take shelter of Shastra and of Guru, and Guru tells you what is the prescribed duty, you act on that. So in this case, Bhagavad Gita is a Shastra, and Srila Prabhupada is the Acharya who is presenting us that what is your prescribed duty. So as a grahastha, as a householder, your prescribed duty is to take care of family. But beyond that also there are further obligations that one has to fulfill to become an ideal grahastha. As a student, this is a prescribed duty. So one has to understand in the light of the scriptures what is my duty, not according to what I think. Several times people get caught into this conception of karma. They say, I am karma yogi because I am doing what is my karma. But how can you say what you're doing is really karma yoga? The karma cannot become yoga until it is connected to the Supreme Lord. Yoga means union. So without you connecting your activity to God, it cannot be karma yoga. The best example is Duryodhana versus Pandavas or Arjuna. Duryodhana was also a great person, but his activities were not for the pleasure of Supreme Lord. Arjuna, his activities were for the pleasure and satisfaction of Supreme Lord, and that's why he's a true karma yogi. That's how we have to understand the difference. And vikarma is the activities which are performed against the scriptural code of conduct. As Naveen Prabhu said, which may hurt others, which may impede our own future prospects of becoming a human being, and also impacting or hurting others. That's vikarma, which is strictly prohibited. And then akarma is the best. Akarma is when you perform the activities but you don't get any reaction. It's not inaction. Akarma doesn't mean that you will not do anything. Akarma means you do the activity but you will not get the material reaction. Either good or bad. You will get a spiritual reaction or spiritual benefit. So let's just take a quick peek into what is this bad karma. At a very broad level for Kali Yuga, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned the four things: Dyutam Panam Striya Shudna Yatra Dharmascha Durvidaha. The translation: Maharaj Parikshit does being petitioned by the personality of Kali, giving permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughtering were performed. This was in a continuation of certain context where Maharaj Parikshit allowed the Kali, the influence of Kali, to be at four places. Where there is gambling going on, the gambling den. Where people are drinking, intoxication. Where there is illicit sex, prostitution is going on. And where there is animal slaughter. These are the four predominating places where the bad karma is situated. And as the Kali Yuga is progressing, these are becoming household activities, are becoming a norm. But we have to understand from these kind of scriptures, the gambling, it actually disturbs or spoils your principle of truthfulness. Because gambling means short time, long gains or big gains, right? Without putting much effort, you play something and you want everybody else's money also. So it's a deceitful activity, it's not truthful. Intoxication or drinking. What happens when you drink? You lose the control on your senses. And that spoils your quality of austerity, tapasya. Because you don't have control on yourself. And you perform any activity which is nonsensical. And which is very, very bad. But is not recommended for someone who is aspiring for spiritual emancipation. Then illicit sex or prostitution. Any sexual activity outside the respectful limits of marriage is called illegal or illicit according to standard scriptures. And that's why one has to abstain from that because it actually spoils your quality of cleanliness. You lose the cleanness from inside and outside both. Animal slaughtering, killing innocent animals for satisfying the taste buds, is spoiling the quality of mercy in our heart. And we get the reaction for that. Killing so many innocent animals will not go in vain. At some point, we have to repay that. As we discussed, as we saw in that story, whatever animal we kill, like for example, if you are walking and sometimes you may stomp upon a small insect, and that insect, that activity might cause several pain, so much pain, excruciating pain to that small insect. And as a reaction, you might see when you are walking, sometimes we hit across a wall or our leg may come across some sort of corner, and it also causes a pain. So pain versus pain, life versus life. It's as simple as that. The law of karma is inexorable and it's impartial. And therefore, we are the cause of karma. Due to our thoughts, words, and action, we are creating our own destiny. Nobody else. We can't question or we can't just challenge. Hey, Bhagwan. Like for example, in Bollywood movies, the moment something happens, you will see all the bells will start ringing, and the person will question the God. मेरे साथ ही क्यों? Why is happening with me? And then all the bells will ring. So we only question the God when something goes wrong. But if something goes well, we will not go and pray. Say thank you. The God is remembered only when something goes wrong. And that is not good. So one should always have the gratitude towards the God. And then we have got this instantly delayed karma, as we slightly touched upon this topic, that sometimes it may take a while before you see the reaction. Like if you are admitted to a hospital and you may see the next bed person is getting discharged and you are getting injections and so many other harsh treatments. You say, come on, why injustice? We both are patients. I am sitting here, I am on this bed, he's on that bed. But that person is getting nice food and he's getting discharged. Why not me? It would be an irrational argument because you never know before you got admitted how long that person has been there and what all treatments he has undergone. But just because he has finished his treatment, now he is getting discharged, one should not be comparative and judgmental. And the very same thing that happens when we compare our situation with others and we start drawing conclusions that I am being prone to, subjected to injustice and not the other person, which is not true. Because every individual person has his own cycle of karma and the karmic reactions. So it's very, very individualistic and it's perfectly justified. So sometimes we make it instant karma, or sometimes we make it delayed karma, where it may go beyond this life. You may get the reaction next life, as we saw in the case of Dhritarashtra. And there is so many other examples also we can quote that sometimes the disease that we get, like we are perfectly well, suddenly we contract some diseases. Why? We can see it has to do something with our previous life. Some people are born in rich families, some people are born in so much of rich family. Why? Some people are able to master the education, some people may not be. Why? Because all these are just an outcome of our prior activities. And we have created whatever seeds we have sown, we are just reaping the benefits or the results of the seed. And nobody has to be blamed for that. The mills of the God grinds slowly but exceedingly fine. That means the purpose of this is nobody is going to get escape. Everyone will have to undergo that grinding machine. Everyone will be subjected to the reaction. Now someone may say, if the God is omnibenevolent, if He's all loving, why is suffering? Why is causing us all this suffering? So that just like as a father or as a mother, as parents, sometimes we might chastise our kid for his betterment. If he doesn't take the medicine, we might reprimand him, we might chastise him, no, you want to take. Even though the act may appear to be a little harsh, but the parent, as parents, we know that it is for his goodwill. Similarly, the God is the eternal Father for all of us. And sometimes his acts may appear to be a little harsh on us. But he knows what is best for us. And he's allowing us to do that. And also there is a paternal or the benevolent factor is there because of which he reminds us every time that hey, you know what, this material world is not a good place for you. Come back. All of us at a given point of time, we must have got some thought, say, hey, what I'm doing. Something is wrong. I mean, this is all same stuff repeated, there's no pleasure, just frustration. This has to be something bigger, something beyond this. Have you ever got this thought? Or anybody who didn't get this kind of thought before? Sometimes, at some point in life, you might have got frustrated with what's happening. Must have thought for something higher. Invariably. As human beings, we should have undergone such kind of experience. And that tells that the Lord who is situated in the heart, as Paramatma, is giving us that indication, that conscience, that sign to tell you that try to see something higher. Don't be in this layer of ignorance. And that is the benevolent factor. He's constantly trying to pull us out of this material world and take us back to God. And the ignorance is not an excuse for this whole thing. Ignorance is just a consequence of your sinful reaction. Meaning which you have performed certain activity because of which you have shown no interest in learning or in knowing about God. So He allowed you to take birth in certain category of society where there is no godliness. And you subsist on that particular path of life. But even then, God will give us a chance. And I am talking about God as a generic concept. Any godliness, bona fide godliness is good practice. So the karma diagram, you see, so this karma bank is you do good activity, boom, it gets added to your bank. Do bad activity, it gets added. As you can see the flow chart. It's called Sanchita Karma. Means your bank is getting deposited by credits and debits. And don't think that this is like trading. I'm sorry, it's not a trading, it's like two accounts. One is a good account, one is a bad account. And every life you are getting the prarabdha karma. Means you're actually getting some part of it in small chunks. And that the Supreme Lord will decide what will happen. In one life you will get this much mixture of happiness and misery. If you only get misery, then you will be completely frustrated fly away. So there will be a balance. And that is the prarabdha. The prarabdha is what is happening in the current life. And based on the prarabdha, you perform an action. And then that action will go back. Based on the action, again, you perform an activity. If you do a good activity, karma, then pious activity, vikarma, bad activity. But the problem is, this cycle will keep going on and on and on. You have to take birth again and again. Even if you do a good thing, you have to take birth again to get the benefit of that good activity. So it's a vicious cycle. Ignorance, number one. Then you desire for something. Ichha dvesha samuthena dvandva mohena bhavata. Sarva bhutani sammoham sarge yanti param. Krishna explains that every conditioned soul in this world is having this desire, ichha and dvesha. Desire to have something and desire to not have something. Ichha dvesha samuthena dvandva mohena bhavata. And they're divided by these three modes of material nature. By the dualities of this world. Sarva bhutani sammoham, all the living beings. Sarge yanti param. Since the time in the beginning, all of us are in this particular. So the desire is that you desire to have something and you desire to not have something. That is also desire. Some people say, I desire this. That also is a desire. Not having a desire also is a desire. Because you are desiring for something. And that desire leads to an attachment. When you perform an activity because of that attachment. That attachment leads to an action. And action leads to the reaction. And the reaction can cause again ignorance. So it keeps again and again. But one has good karma. And that's the main theme of this discussion.